Hey, what's up, guys? It's the Fantasy Files podcast. It's your co-hosts, Brandon Deutsch and Grant Mona here. We got special guest, Xavier Indeglia, very knowledgeable basketball man, fantasy basketball god, legend, 6-0 right now in fantasy, best fantasy team of all time, probably. This is it's like David versus Goliath here for all, for the Bible lovers. This is really just, when I go up against that guy, it's just all odds are on the table, all odds against me. I want to congratulate Grant on beating my injury-prone team last week. Such an L for my team. They've been, but I'll get my man Zion back if he passes the weight scale.
Put in Zion and Ben Simmons in the first game.
Yeah,
of
Ben
the week.
Simmons needs to play too, and he might have to if he wants some money. But before we get into it, I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, thebookie.co, #1 sports betting newsletter. You can visit them at www.thebookie.co. Subscribe and make some money, guys, with some picks. So we're so grateful for our sponsors. We're grateful for Xavier being here today, too. So if you're unaware of everything, we're going to start this timer for 15 minutes and just go through these picks. Before we do that, both Grant and I need to do the talk of shame. We didn't get enough right last week, and it was because of injury. Alec Burks, who we all said was going to be a winner, hurt. Kevin Porter sucked. I was wrong on him. I'll admit that. Josh Hart, yeah, we were right about Josh Hart. Patrick Beverley got hurt, so we couldn't do that. And then Will Barton and Patty Mills we were right about. So we only talked about 6 guys, and we were both 3 or 4 out of 6. Either way, it's under 70%. That's why we increased the time to 15 minutes, because we were setting ourselves up for failure with a 10-minute timer, because you can only talk about so many guys. With the guest, we're going to talk about hopefully 10 to 15 guys, and we'll have the 15 minutes on the timer. And so I'm sorry about that. Grant, you got anything to say? That's the timer. Never going to happen again, right?
I had a bad week in football, and I had a bad week in basketball. The highlight, though, was beating you in fantasy, because Tyrese Maxey, the guy that I brought over, destroyed you. So that's a good W for me.
Yeah, it wasn't just Tyrese Maxey, unfortunately. It was your whole team. Grant has a bunch of these guys. He's one of those guys who has no superstars, and he has all depth. They're all good. All of them are good.
I'm the 2019 Raptors. That's who I am.
And then Xavier's lowest scoring fantasy player is 20 fantasy points per game, Bobby Portis. But let's get into it. Let me start the timer right here for 15 minutes. Let's do it. Alrighty, first guy I want to talk about is Alec Burks.
By the way, thank you, Grant and Brandon, for having me on your podcast. But anyways, yes, I did pick up Alec Burks the second I got the notification. And that was, I think, a clear winner of a pickup, because, Tom Thibodeau is always very, strict on who he's going to play in his rotations. I don't know if you remember last year, it was maybe the year before, when he announced that Ntilikina was out of the rotation, and then he didn't play Ntilikina for the rest of the season. So he very much likes to fiddle around with rotations if something's not working. And Alec Burks, who is probably one of the second or third best player for the Knicks in that playoff series against the Hawks, is now getting his chance to be a starting point guard for this team. I think, and like you mentioned, he's already been hot coming off the bench. Now that he's got the reins as the starting point guard with Rosen quickly backing him up, any league he's available, you should scoop him up. He's definitely going to, have a good week at least, and for the foreseeable future, as long as the Knicks are playing well with him starting, he should still get those starter minutes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you go down his game log just in the past week, 15, 20, 13, 12, and then he had 23 against the Hawks, and he's shooting at a 50% three-point clip, which is really good. I mean, look, we all knew he could shoot. I kind of saw him as a shooting guard, actually, last year. They kind of used him as that. But, inserting him into that starting lineup, they needed offense. Kemba Walker, look, I love what Kemba Walker has done in his career, but he's just tailed off, man, and they needed somebody that can come in there and just shoot the lights out of the ball. Like I said, he had a 23-point outing. if he's on the waiver wire, pick this guy up because, like Xavier said, if Tom Thibodeau says that something's going to happen, he means business. It's probably going to happen. So, I pick him as a winner too, just because now he's going to get more minutes. He's going to get a lot more touches, so his points per game are going to go up. His assists are probably going to go up. So, yeah, I'm all in on him.
I want to talk about it. Willie Hernan Gomez, Nick from Killy Willie himself in limited minutes. This guy is absolutely balling in fantasy. And again, it's been a couple games recently, and it's been 22 fantasy points, 25 fantasy points, 18 fantasy points, and 12, right? Averaging about like 16 fantasy points a game, 17 fantasy points a game. This is a guy on waivers in most leagues, and I think he's going to be an absolute winner. Until Zion comes back, this is really Valanciunas and company, right? So this is a guy, Hernan Gomez, who's coming in. He's blocking shots. Never been a huge fan of his game, but this is another guy like Alec Burks. He's playing ridiculously good right now, and that's something that warrants an ad for people. I think he's a sure thing winner this week. Grant, what do you think? And then Xavier.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you just because, look, he had 19 and 11, 13 and 7, 13 and 8, 10 and 8. He's kind of like what I said like Şengün was, where he's just like the kind of guy that does all the dirty work, gets things done. And yeah, I mean, he'll get a few blocks for you. I mean, at one game he had 13. This is a stat line, which is crazy. 13, 7, 4, 2 blocks and 3 steals. Like, that's a very good stat line. So he has the ability to do that, and I think that's the thing that he's coming around to do is he's not going to wow you with the numbers. Look, 19 and 11 is probably the highest that he can go. I mean, he had 19 and 13. Of course he had it. 19 and 11. But, yeah, I mean, look, the Pelicans are they are what they are. I think we all can agree with that. Valanciunas and kind of Hernan Gomez, and even Ingram's had a down year. Nickeil Alexander-Walker's had a down year. So Hernan Gomez has been doing all the dirty work, and if he continues to do that, obviously he's a great fantasy ad. Maybe not for their team because their team's really not going anywhere. They had a few good wins, but fantasy value, yeah, I'll take him.
And before we get into Xavier, I'm sorry to cut you off. 96% of leagues he's available in. Hernan Gomez is available in 96% of leagues, and he's an absolute winner. So you got to lock him in. We're giving you that good advice. We're the wire hunters right here, the waiver wire hunters. This is our life. Our life. I got like life, I'm saying. I sounded very Italian there. All right, Xavier, let's go.
I disagree with both of you. I think Billy Hernan Gomez is a loser this week. I think that even in the recent games he's been playing well, he's been getting sub 20 minutes each game. And the only reason Billy should be picked up is if Valanciunas gets hurt. Because then he'll be getting the 26-plus minutes a game, and the efficiency, the rebounds will go up. But I think if you're getting, 18 to 20 minutes each game, then there will be some games as a bench player where they might not need you, where they might want to run a small lineup, where Valanciunas might end up playing 38 minutes because he's having a strong outing. I think that's too unreliable of minutes and of a role, even though he does tend to do the dirty work sometimes off the bench. I think if Valanciunas is healthy, then you should be using your waiver wire picks on somebody who's getting more consistent minutes.
That's fair.
This is why we have Xavier around, because he can give us that alternate take.
That's
man.
fair.
I love
Xavier,
that. Everyone else.
I know you mentioned minutes. Xavier, can you get your face in the middle of your camera?
Yeah.
Just so. I don't know, it's just annoying me. There we go. Sorry, I'll edit that part out of me asking you to get your face in the middle. I know that beautiful face. I just want to see it.
Leave that in.
All right, let's go next to a guy, Deandre Bembry. And this is a guy that has benefited from Joe Harris being like Patty Mills. He's averaging 19.2 fantasy points over the last days. And this is crazy because this is a guy that is minutes now. He wasn't getting minutes before. Enough numbers. I'd be surprised if he's not a win week. I really like him. I think he's a guy to look out for on the waiver wire. I mean, he's available in 99.6% of leagues. Isn't that mind-boggling? Just think about that for a second. 99.6% of leagues, DeAndre is available. In his game logs of games, 28 points, 18 points, 2 steals, 9 rebounds, right? Before that, 23 fantasy points, 10 rebounds, just 3 steals. and he's just been balling. So that's a guy you got to keep an eye on. And Xavier was the guy who brought it up to us. We looked at him and we were like, yeah, Bembry, he's averaging 9 on the year, but the recent games is very important. This is why he's 6-0 in fantasy basketball right here, because this is a guy he keeps an eye on. He snatches them off the waivers like this once they have games like that. So I'm in on Bembry. I think he's a winner. Xavier, you want to go next, and then Grant?
Yeah, I think Bembry's a winner as well. He's been getting a lot more minutes lately ever since Joe Harris has been out, and then the big announcement today that Joe Harris is getting surgery, so he's going to be out even longer. The reason I think he's a winner is just because the makeup of this Nets team is very, it's kind of funky. It's very much centered around Durant and Harden, so they don't really have a traditional rebounder. The 2 leading rebounders on that team are Harden and Durant. And so now that, Bembry comes in and he's getting Joe Harris's minutes, he can come in. He's got 10 rebounds against Phoenix. 10 rebounds against Boston, 9 rebounds against Phoenix. He's going to get, his shots set up easily because Durant and Harden are going to find open looks for him. And he's getting a lot of minutes. He got 41 minutes against Orlando, 35 minutes against Phoenix. So if he can keep this up, I think he's a winner.
Yeah, I'm going to agree just because, like we said before, we're going off of recency. And, 18-9 against a formidable front in the Suns, that's pretty good. And then against Boston, 9-10. And, the main qualm that Xavier had with the other guys that we mentioned was the minutes. And this guy's getting the minutes. Like, he's getting 34, 26, 20. He had 41 minutes a game. Like Xavier said, he had it against Orlando. So, this guy won't shoot the 3. He doesn't shoot the 3, but he will. He's like I said, another one of those guys, dirty work. Gets the dirty work done. But, with Joe Harris out, they're kind of probably going to use him even more now. So that's why you saw the numbers go up a little bit ever since Joe Harris went down. And now that Joe Harris is out for an extended period of time, they kind of got to slot him in that small forward spot. And he's getting the job done, man. So, yeah. I really like him. I'd probably use him as a utility, to slot him in a utility. But yeah, I really like Deandre Bembry. I like the way he fits on this team. He played with Toronto last year, didn't get as much run as he's probably going to get now. So you'll probably see him blossom now. So I really like him.
Nice. Yeah, those are some good points. Let's go into Tyus Jones next. And this is a guy that you guys are higher on than me. 24 minutes last game. This is with Morant out, and he benefited from Morant being out the previous 2 seasons because Morant always goes through like an injury per season. It's sad. Like, with that explosion comes with a cost, right? Westbrook's been the only guy that really hasn't dealt with injuries like that with that much explosion. Zion Williamson deals with injuries, right? So he's benefited in the past. This time it's different. They're using Melton at the guard position, Brooks at the guard position. Kyle Anderson can play point guard even. He's been great. Desmond Bane. These are all guys that can play point guard. So I'm out on Tyus Jones just with the game that Morant's, went out in 24 minutes. He'll have more minutes, but this is a guy who's just assists. And if he doesn't get the steals like he used to get, this is a guy that I'm completely out on. I think you leave him on the waivers. Tyus Jones is going to be a loser this week. Grant, you want to go?
Yeah, it's crazy because you figure Ja Morant goes down, they're going to insert him in there, and he's going to kind of take over as the starting point guard for a little bit. But I don't know, man. The numbers, like you said, it's really mainly assists. The biggest game he had was 16. And he doesn't shoot the 3 a lot, too, so it's not like he can kill you from there. He hasn't shot the 3 well in the last 10. But, he's going to get a lot of minutes, but I just don't think the minutes and the fantasy stat line that you like to see is going to be enough for me to keep him in the lineup. Maybe if somebody goes down, but, yeah, I just don't see him as a short-term fantasy pickup, in my opinion.
Xavier, all you.
Yeah, I definitely see what you guys are saying. Tyus Jones, he's really not that good of a basketball player, or at least not anymore. He was drafted in 2015, and since he was drafted, he's kind of been the player that's been the backup for point guards that are always getting hurt. He came off the bench for the Timberwolves when they had Jeff Teague getting hurt all the time. And so I've seen him go through spurts where, he can put up 11 assist nights, like you guys were talking about the assists, as a starting point guard if he's getting starting point guard minutes. But you're right, it is tough. Kyle Anderson is a big distributor on that team as well. They do have Melton sharing the backcourt with him. I'm gonna say he's a winner reluctantly, just because I want to see what he can do, because he was third on the team in assists last year, behind Morant and Anderson, and now he's given the reins as the starting point guard until Morant comes back. So I feel like he could stuff the stat sheet, but like I mentioned, and like you guys are talking about, aside from assists, you're not going to get too much from him unless he can get his shots going in, which it's been a while since he's done.
And he's a very smart basketball player. Doesn't turn the ball over a lot. That's another thing. So he's always a good guy, because you want to limit turnovers in fantasy basketball. All right, let's go to Marvin Bagley. And this is a guy who had a huge game against the Lakers last weekend. He had 23 fantasy points in the first game. He got minutes, really. I mean, the game before he had 19 minutes for 13 fantasy points, 10 points, 8 rebounds. He's always been great in limited minutes. It's all been about play time, right? Bagley's getting more play time. Memphis, a little bit concerning after that huge game he had against the Lakers. 8 fantasy points, 5 points, 1 steal, 4 rebounds only in 19 minutes. And again, like Xavier mentioned, minutes are very important. He's only getting, and look, this is misleading because he missed, Luke Walton didn't play him at all, but 17.6 minutes per game, and recently 24 minutes per game. That's kind of concerning. I'm honestly torn, but I'm going to say Bagley hasn't shown enough consistency. He's going to be a loser this week. As much as I like him, and he's a valid pickup if you need a guy, if you need depth on your team, he has the ability to break out and become a fantasy basketball star this year, but it just hasn't happened yet. We need more consistency. So I'm out on him, and we got about a minute left. So we're going to go over a little bit, but I want to hear Xavier's thoughts, then Grant's.
Sure, thanks. I think you should stay away from Bagley. I'm out on Bagley. This is his 4th year in the league, and he hasn't really shown anything. This is the guy who's drafted above Luka, and this is year 4. And now he's not even getting minutes. He's not even part of the rotation. And I think it's a little bit of fool's gold that he's been getting some minutes recently. I don't think it's because Luke Walton got fired. I think it's because Rashawn Holmes and Harrison Barnes have been out this past week. And so once their front court gets healthy with Tristan Thompson and the rookie Metu, I think that Bagley is going to get out of the rotation again, and I would stay away from him.
Yeah, I don't think Sacramento's a good fit for him in general. I mean, they just signed Rashawn Holmes, and Rashawn Holmes has been hurt, like Xavier said. Harrison Barnes has been their best player. He was hurt. They kind of had to put him in there, and sure, he showed his potential. He showed what he could do against the Lakers. I mean, he went 5 for 5. He was 100% on everything: free throws, field goal percentage, everything. And he got 34 minutes, and that's kind of what you can see if he goes somewhere else. But he's not going to go somewhere else. He's going to still be on the Kings when those guys come back, and everyone's going to be like, oh, well, was Luke Walton holding him back? No, I just think that they had to put him in. So, like you said, we need to see more consistency out of him. We need to see more time from him. And until I see them actually give him minutes when everyone's back, I will leave him out of my lineup. So, yeah, I'm out on him, unfortunately, because I really like his game, but unfortunately, it's not a good fantasy ad right now.
There's the timer. We'll go over a little bit just because we have a guest. Usually we'll do the 15-minute timer. Let's go next to Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and this is interesting because he just started getting minutes for OKC, rookie out of Villanova. He's been good. I mean, he's averaging 22 minutes per game. This is a guy who had 21 fantasy points the other day and 15 the day before, or 2 days before, and 22 a game in the middle. He had 22 as well. He's come back to earth recently. He's sitting around 8 to 10 fantasy points per game. I just think I don't trust anyone on OKC other than Shai. I mean, I don't even trust Luke Dort. I know we mentioned that last week. I'm out on Jeremiah Robinson Earl. As good as he's been in the last couple of weeks, I am completely out on him. I think he's a loser.
When we go back to the football ones, and I always have that one team that I stay away from, I think the Thunder are one of those. Look, I mean, Dort's been playing really well. He's upped his offensive game a lot. I think we can all see that. He had that stretch where he had 30 points in each game. He did have, I think, 20-something this past week, but like we said before, it's just him and Shea. It's really nobody else. And look, OKC's that team that's going to scrap. They're that team that's going to, maybe get a win here and there against somebody big. But Robinson Earl, I mean, he's really not an integral part of what they want to do in the future, so I feel like they're not going to really invest a lot of time into him in the lineup. And they're going to give the ball out to Dort, they're going to give the ball out to Shea. Even they might even give it to Favors a lot. But I'm going to stay away from a lot of people on the Thunder, with the exception of Shea, because I love Shea. The Clippers drafted him. Jerry knows everything. Then he traded him away for Paul George. But yeah, I'm out on Earl. I like Dort and I like Shea, but nobody else. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys. The thing is, if a player is a starting center for a team, he's always worth looking at, in my opinion. But I'm with you guys. He's just not a big part of what they're doing, even though he is their starting center. If he was going to really be getting a look in fantasy, he would need to start rebounding the ball more consistently, because we know he's not going to score. We know they're not going to be feeding him the ball too often. So if he's not getting, 8 to 11 rebounds each game, you should look for someone else.
That makes sense. The last guy we're going to talk about today is Grant Williams, and this is why. Talk about recent weeks' consistency. 28 minutes, 27 minutes, 22 minutes, 25 minutes, 35 minutes. In those games, 24 fantasy points, 12 fantasy points, 10 fantasy points, 17 fantasy points, and 19 fantasy points. This guy's obviously been hot as of late. Robert Williams is another guy that steals his production, and Al Horford. But Grant Williams is really good, and there's no denying that. Personally, I think Grant Williams is going to be a loser, as good as he's been recently, just because there's so much production to go around on that team, obviously as well with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and even Dennis Schroeder. So, I mean, I'm out on him. I can't rely on a guy like that. I'm keeping him on the waivers. Loser.
Wow. I actually think he's going to be a winner, just because they're giving him a lot of minutes. And if you look at it, he doesn't take a lot of threes, but when he does, I mean, he's shooting at 44%, which isn't amazing. It's actually pretty good. But in his last 10, against Toronto, he went 15-5. But then he had 7, 8, 2. It's like there's no really consistency. But I'm going to keep him in there just because they're giving him some decent minutes. Like, if you give him a decent minutes, and look, I know everyone's going to say, well, Tatum and Brown. But if you give a guy minutes like that, he's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to give you points and rebounds, so it's not really like he's going to wow you with anything crazy. But 15-5 is pretty good. 7-5, no, not so good. He is inconsistent, but I mean, I like him. I don't know. I've always liked Grant Williams' game. I like Grant Williams and Robert Williams, but I mean, he's got enough talent to where if you give him the minutes, he can put up stat lines like that consistently. And I think in this next week, I think he's going to build off of that 15-5 game. I really do. And I don't really like the Celtics, but I like Grant Williams. I don't know. I'm going to say it. I like Grant Williams.
Xavier, what do you think? Close us out here.
As long as either Horford or Robert Williams are out, Grant Williams is going to be pretty efficient, have a solid night. And those are two players that tend to miss a lot of time. Horford's like 50 years old, and Robert Williams always has some issue. For this week, I'm hesitant to call him a winner because the Celtics are playing Philadelphia, Utah, and Portland, 3 teams with pretty big front courts. So I'm not sure if Grant Williams will be able to hold his own against them. But on the other hand, that might mean they use him more because they need someone who can rebound. So I'll go with him being a winner just because I'm a Celtics fan. But, it's highly dependent on if Williams comes back or if Horford is still healthy as well. So,
all right, I'm with it. I see your guys' points. Just know if you want to hear more basketball, we're going to be having a podcast soon for Baller Sports Dialogue, the podcast version, and we're going to be talking about more non-fantasy stuff, more real life, like what's wrong with the Lakers? Why do they suck?
We're back.
We're back. We're going to be doing that too.
I'm so
if you guys want to hear our voices longer, dominant in fantasy ball, and we're going to give you guys great advice. So please listen to us again. Grateful for thebookie.co. It's your co-hosts Brandon Deutsch and Graham Mona, Xavier Indeglia. Thank you so much for being on. Hope you get to 6-1, not 7-0.
Thanks, Xavier.
Selfishly.